Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. Time flies. It seems like only yesterday we began this weekly journey with you, and today it's a whole year. On the Record celebrates its first anniversary, and we thank you for allowing us into your homes every Thursday evening. We cannot say that organizing each episode has been that easy, but our determination to keep you informed on the political current affairs in this country has been our driving force and priority. Our very first guest was former Social Services Minister and Leader of the Opposition in the House of Assembly, Loretta Turner. And she joins us here today to talk about political matters over the past year. As we go with the theme On the Record, a look 1 year later, we will examine governance and politics in our country. We also have as our guest tonight, attorney and former Democratic National Alliance leader Brian McCartney, PLP Senator Clay Sweeting, and sociologist Joseph Gaskins Jr. It's all On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer, and we are back in a moment.
Wait, that's Omar Little from The Wire.
You think everyone is Omar from The Wire?
Wow, it's really nice to meet a fan.
It's like he's right here.
I telling you he's being all type shows and stuff?
And you know, Rev Go Play plays a lot of good movies and TV shows.
Excuse me, can't you see we're watching something else? Rude.
Settle all your pop culture disputes with Rev Go Play. Watch, record, and stream all your favorite shows wherever you are. Free for all Rev TV subscribers. Rev, you and us together.
Are you afraid to swipe your card and you don't like to carry cash? If so, you need checks. Executive Printers can make checks for all your needs. They have laser checks, personal checks, continuous checks, and more. All checks have up to 15 security features, so you know you'll be protected. You can even customize your checks. Come and see one of our experts today, or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
Welcome back to On the Record. Thank you for joining us for our first anniversary show. Former F&M Cabinet Minister Loretta Turner joins us in this extended segment. Our topic tonight, On the Record, a look 1 year later. Mrs. Turner, welcome back to On the Record. This is your first time in studio, but you were my very first guest a year ago. We came out to your home. You graciously allowed us in, and we began this show with you and the current political climate. 1 year later, you've been very quiet. I see you out from time to time, but you know, the main question on my mind is what has been happening with you? What's been going on?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me back, and I must say I deem it a privilege to have been asked again because I have been very quiet, and I believe that one of the things that has happened 1 year out is that I have been able to be very introspective. I've been able to reprioritize a lot of things in my life. And I think that when the vote was counted and I was not in the number to be an MP any longer, I realized that it's important that I step away and, you know, respect everything that the people had chosen. And so that's why I've pretty much stayed very much under the political radar. And of course, to be on a political show today is a little bit, you know, out of my element for now. So it's a delight to be here, though.
Well, you don't seem to be out of your element at all. What do you think would have precipitated or led to your defeat in the election?
I think it was very clear. The people wanted change. You know, it was important that the country rid itself, purge itself of the PLP government, and I don't think they wanted to take any chances at all. Whatever their reasons, I was not elected, and the Free National Movement was made the government, and so here we are a year later.
Do you still consider yourself a member of the Free National Movement?
I'm actually, I've resolved within myself that my philosophy has always been aligned with that of the Free National Movement. But as you know, when I contested the election as an independent, I was no longer a member of the Free National Movement. And so I'm basically a nationalist.
Do you have any regrets on anything that would have happened?
I never lived my life with regrets. You know, one of the things that I coined from, I guess you will recall, a few years ago, that I coined from the great South African leader Mandela, is that I never lose. I either win or I learn. And so with that as my mantra, I do not live life in regrets. I take away from life everything that I've done. I try to learn the lesson and then build upon that, or determine if in fact it could have perhaps turned out differently. But no, I don't regret anything.
Why was it important for you to step back, as you put it, and remain silent? A lot of times we see individuals will lose an election, but still remain very vocal or still remain in the forefront. Why was it important for you to take that step back?
I think that given the very high profile, the contention of all that I had with the Free National Movement, the fact that I was very, very confrontational toward the PLP, took the fight to them. I thought it was important to not muddy the water any further with all of the past that I had endured with the Free National Movement coming out of there. I know that there was enough blame to go around with regards to what had happened, and you know, since it was believed that I precipitated a lot of that, I thought it was important for me to remove myself totally from the equation.
Mm-hmm. We're just now shy of 1 year into the administration. Your views on the performance of the Prime Minister and his cabinet?
You know, I figured a question like this would arise today, and I thought back to everything that I have said in the past. I thought about all that I articulated with regards to my view and the collective view of my former colleagues, and I don't think anything has changed. Usually when I speak from a position of fact. I speak from a position of being sure about what it is I say. And my view really has not changed over this past year with regards to Minnis and his leadership.
When you say nothing has changed, are you speaking though specifically to him or to governance?
I think that one of the things that political parties live for is to be the government. I believe that in this instance it was very important that the Free National Movement realized a victory. I still, and I think each day that we experience under this government, we realize that there was a lot of effort in the winning, but very little effort in the execution of governance.
And specifically to a minister, you said that your view, to the Prime Minister, your views towards him have not changed. It's more of the same. And when when we look at the opposition leader and party leader, how is he different, or is there any difference in the Prime Minister, Hubert Minnis?
I believe that the truth is really in the views of the Bahamian people. Even though I have remained very much under the radar, I move about the country extensively, very much incognito, so that I do not become engaged in the political dialogue. But I know that all too often people are now even more so pulling me aside and saying, boy, almost as if buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse, not that they got rid of the PLP. I think there was no question that the PLP and their under Perry Christie and the entire team of leaders within the PLP were very toxic for the Bahamas. There was no alternative. There really was no alternative. I do not believe that, in hindsight, that people were gung-ho on the Free National Movement or a Minnis-led government, but it was their only choice. And I also believe that there was a mistake in assuming that you can fix what is wrong once you're in office. And so I think the manifestation of all of that now is coming to light. And I don't wish to be totally negative, but you know, when expectations are high, when people are vulnerable, when there is a huge desire for change, and over a period of time, you see that there just appears to be the same lackadaisical, ineffectual leadership that one had in a Minnis as leader of the opposition, and that now translating as Prime Minister, people are coming to the realization that, you know, maybe there could have been, maybe there should have been other options, which brings us to the whole issue of the two-party system in our country, I believe. And unfortunately, outside of the status quo of the Free National Movement and the FNM, there was the DNA, there were independents, there were any other number of fringes out there. But, you know, we are still pretty much stuck in the status quo, either the Saxons or the Valley Boys, either the PLP or the FNM, that sort of thinking.
Is there a, do you think, or have people said to you that they would have regretted not making you leader of the party when they had the opportunity?
I get that in many different ways, you know, but you have to look at human nature. People make their decisions based on not so much what is for the greater good, but they make their political decisions based on what they deem is in their personal interest. And I think that it's going to take a while for people to move away from that. So when a person says that to me, I do not know if that is something from a position of I want better for our country or I want better for me. And so yes, people have said that to me privately, but you know, I think that it takes a lot more political growth for us as a country to accept that there is the ability to make change outside of the two established political parties.
A lot of people were opposed to your leadership simply because you were a woman.
That is true.
Do you foresee that, do you foresee us ever getting to that point where that will no longer be a factor in the decision as who becomes party leader and who becomes Prime Minister?
I think that you'll go through cycles of, and this is what we have been seeing, this constant cycle of switching out players, but basically having the same level of lack of planning for governance. I think people can call it many things, ineptitude, incompetence, whatever. But I think what it actually boils down to is a lack of planning, because people have now said to me, I listened to what your vision was. I was very impressed with it. Can we do that? No, we can't do that, because once the vote is done, once the choice is made, you live with that choice and you respect that choice, because that was the choice that was made. And so, you know, if hindsight were something we had in the moment, which we don't, then people would probably make different choices. But we can always see the wrongs or the right in hindsight.
When you look at the public opposition to the proposed O-Ban deal, you would look at what would have the very public dispute between a Reece Chipman recently, you know, let go from his position, and the Prime Minister. You see other now pockets of discontent and discourse. When you see these things happening, on one side with the governing party, you see an opposition almost emboldened and empowered, and certainly, again, stepping forward. Have people begun to look back at the PLP? Are you getting that in some of the responses you received from the public? Are people now viewing the PLP differently, or is it we're just not happy with what's happening with the FNM?
It's going to take a lot for the PLP to gain credibility again. But, you know, in politics, everything is opportunistic. And when you look at oppositions, they're going to say many of the things that are going to be appealing to the people. Unfortunately, it goes right back to my point of how do we get to a position of electing change, real change, planned change. And so the PLP is, and rightly so, taking advantage of all of the missteps, the bad judgment calls that the FNM is now making. Does it make them more appealing to the Bahamian people? I think the Bahamian people, the taste of the last PLP administration, the bad taste, if you will, is still in their mouths. But they do expect an opposition to do what opposition is supposed to do, and that is to keep government on its toes. And so in that regard, I think that people are happy that you have some voices that are opposing. Unfortunately, in our situation as we have it today, there is such a huge imbalance. You know, the gap was not as large, but yet still huge when we were in opposition with 9 of us. And or 10 of us later on against 28 persons. You now have an imbalance of 35 to 4. That is a huge imbalance. It does not do justice to democracy, if you will. So what we need to have, and you know, I applaud activism. I applaud you know, civil movements, because really, sometimes it's going to fall to the public, the same way the public and others are coming together against the O-Ban deal. People are speaking out. I think that is bolstering and actually empowering the opposition to be more vociferous. It's important that you always have the voice of opposition. Without it, you have no democracy. And so whether that voice comes from the 4 that sit in Parliament in opposition, or whether it comes from groupings outside, the O-Ban deal clearly is not a misstep. It's not poor public relations. It's poor judgment. It's very, very poor judgment. And, you know, I thought about the entire concept of this minister-led administration. And I recall specifically many times him touting the benefits of being a minister without portfolio and being a CEO so that he can ensure that there's good governance all around. And so let's say we look at this model. We need to take a step back as Bahamians and see if in fact that model is doing what it's supposed to do. There's been just too much blame. Oh, this one hasn't done that, or the other person didn't do that, from the position of a prime minister who says that he's the CEO of all of his cabinet ministers, pretty much having not a lot of responsibility outside of being able to ensure that your ministers are operating at an optimal position. It's fallen short greatly.
Is the administration and is the cabinet now a house of cards that's preparing to crumble?
I don't know. I do not have any inside information with regards to that. I can only look at what is happening and playing out in the public domain. And when you have a sitting cabinet minister coming out publicly and encouraging the prime minister to do what is right, it says to me, from my history of working within cabinet and working in particular with a minister leadership, that there is a lot going on under the surface, and this is just the first pimple of eruption. The other eruption, the dismissal or the termination of a Reese Chipman, which we have no explanation for. I cannot speak to the merits or the demerits with regards to the Reese Chipman situation, but I do know that as a leader, we must articulate, especially a leader that says we're going to do things differently, we're going to be transparent, we're going to be accountable. That is the antithesis of transparency, of accountability. And so it appears that there is a rumbling under the surface that is coming in intermittent eruptions right now.
Interesting. Yes, no, maybe. Will we ever see a Loretta Turner in frontline politics again?
To be very honest with you, I am thoroughly enjoying my life where I am. And, you know, as I said, I've reprioritized, I've introspected. Who knows what the future holds? As it stands today, the future is the future.
Well, I think that is a good way, well, that's a good cliffhanger, and we thank you for that. We're out of time in this segment, but I do want to say thank you very much for stopping by. I do appreciate you agreeing to our invitation. Thank you so much. Always good to hear from you. I'm sure the public would have enjoyed this segment as well. We thank you so much again. Thank you for being my very first guest.
And thank you.
And coming back on. All the best to you.
Thank you very much.
I will find you and we're going to talk again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is our first anniversary, and you have been watching our discussion with our very first guest on this show, former Cabinet Minister Loretta Turner. Thank you so much for being a part of our memory. We are going to take our first break and return with more on the record right after this.
This segment is sponsored by Percy's Island Game.
We're gonna give you a check every week for a year! Percy's Pension Plan, Island Game.
Bro, you hear about Percy's Pension Plan?
Yeah, something about $1,000 a week for a year.
That's Percy's Pension Plan. You could win one of 5. All you gotta do is put $20 on your Island Game account, and you have a chance to win up to 52 times.
You know something, guys? I can need one of those Percy's Pension Plan, you know, because with Island Game, it's surely a guarantee.
Island Game, we got you. Percy's Pension Plan. From the
Oi, I ain't got no tension, I got Percy's pension.
Counting right this easy train at Percy's Island Game.
Welcome back to More on the Record. We continue our discussions on the record. A look 1 year later with attorney and former DNA leader Brian McCartney, PLP Senator Clay Sweeting, and sociologist Joseph Gaskins Jr. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Two of you, welcome back. Clay, welcome. This is your first time.
Yes, sir.
Well, a year later and we've gotten you on. Good to have you with us. Gentlemen, we have an esteemed panel tonight. We would have begun the show really with our very first guest, looking back at what all that has happened in the past year of the new government and Prime Minister and new cabinet. And we are just now shy of a year. But one of the first things that happened when the new government, Prime Minister, Minister and cabinet came to office, there were a series of high-ranking arrests followed by some called shaming and court charges of corruption dealings, public crying for blood, and satisfied with these court appearances. And then all of a sudden, nothing. It goes quiet. Do you think this was just a tease to satisfy the public or satisfy that appetite that was left, or the taste that was left in the mouths of some voters and people for wanting justice or some kind of vindication or whatever? Was this just a PR exercise, I guess? Brian, I'll start with you.
Well, let me just say congratulations on your first anniversary, and thank you for having me. I don't know if it was a PR exercise, and I still don't know what it is, but the reality is you had some former ministers that were charged and put before the court, and the cases, to my knowledge, are still continuing. I think recently some charges have been dropped, I'm told, with regards to one former minister, but the matters continue. And from a judicial point of view, these things do take time. So it had that excitement, I would imagine. It was right after the elections. Persons were charged, but the matters are still going on. So we really don't know exactly what's going to happen in that regard.
Joey, from a public perspective, do you think people have sort of have moved on from it, or?
I don't think so. So I want to approach this in two ways, right? One, the idea that this is a PR exercise, I think sometimes belies the fact that the Office of the Attorney General and its professional staff there, its technical staff there, the DPP's office, they are equipped, they are ethical, and they engage on these cases not for political reasons, but
that's the part I think sometimes people miss.
Yes.
Right.
And we saw this a lot. I've worked for the AG's office in both administrations, and I think sometimes we believe that the Attorney General himself or herself has all the power to direct the ministry. That's not usually the case, and usually they take advice from their technical staff, their prosecutors. So I want to say that first. But I think the other thing is that there is a narrative that seems to be emerging about the current administration that's going to be problematic for them, right? Which is that there is usually bluster, a lot of talk at the beginning of something, whether it is a New Deal or these prosecutions, and then it kind of tinkers away over time. And it's either minimized or it's completely obliterated in some way, shape, or form. And that's problematic because at the end of the day, whatever you say about how governance has happened in this country, part of the larger issue is that people there's a deficit of trust in the way that governments have run this country. And as we all know in our personal relationships, if you tell someone you're going to do something, and then that gets minimized over time and then it dissipates entirely, people begin to find it hard to trust you. And so I think the present administration has to be very careful about that emerging narrative.
Clay, from the PLP's perspective.
Well, I think that prior to the election, Ministers and NAFNM campaigned a lot on corruption and things of that sort. So there was an appetite, there was a movement through this country that the PLP was so corrupt. So after the election, Ministers and this administration, I think they needed to take steps to try to prove what they campaigned on. I see recently that Shane Gibson's charges were dropped. And you know, so you just don't know what's going on with a lot of things in this administration. They campaigned on accountability and transparency, but it's a lot of things that, you know, you just don't know what's happening. Even the member Frederick McAlpine said, you know, in an interview yesterday, that even the dog and the cat knows more than what he knows, and he's within the administration. So at the same token, you know, our leader spoke about that the chips fall where they may. You know, we don't support corruption at all. Accountability is number one. So, you know, it just seemed like this back and forth, and they wanted to feed the appetite that the PLP was a so-called corrupt party.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. One of the things, one of the first international forums visited by the Prime Minister shortly after taking office was in CARICOM, where he spoke about this whole issue of ending corruption, specifically in the Bahamas. Do you think that was the right forum, the right time? Was it the right thing to say and do? Joey, I'll start with you.
I think perhaps this is a question made for Branville to answer, but from my perspective, I think the issue of corruption is something that we're dealing with on a regional level. There are a lot of things, I think, regionally and globally that the Bahamas should be leading on. This could certainly be one of those things. I think sometimes the focus on political corruption may sometimes be misplaced. I think in a lot of ways, the way that we, in our day-to-day lives as Bahamians, support, encourage, participate in small corruption, from whether that is how you get your particular certificates or official documentation to you know, how you get your licenses for your business. The focus of corruption, I think, has to be a bit more widespread than simply on the opposition or simply on former administration. It has to be, I think, far more wide-reaching.
Are we, you know, we all going into election and we all scream corruption and we need more accountability, but are we, as a people, ready for that? Because when you talk about stamping out corruption, like Joey said, it is at the very basic level. I can give you $20 so I can get my license done faster. Now, I might say that's a tip, or buy yourself some lunch, but if you look at it, I am paying a public servant to do something that, you know, sort of transgresses what the laws are, or what is the policy. Are we prepared to do what it takes to get rid of or begin to bring an end to so much corruption?
As a people?
Yeah, let's start with the people.
No. I mean, part of the corruption is the people. And it's almost a way of life in the Bahamas now. You gave an example, something as small as giving a $10 lunch money to get my permit out of immigration. That has been going on for years. And that's a way of living for some people, a lot of people. So the reality is, and the answer is, no, we're not ready for it. We don't want it. And I don't see it happening. However, it will have to take the leadership of the country to direct our people away from their ways.
Is that happening?
Not yet. I think the intention may be there, but it's not happening yet.
Do you agree?
To some aspect, I do, but I also think that we have a lot of youth in this country. You know, the youth voters drove the last election. I think with technology at this day and age, with WhatsApp and things of that sort, that the youth of this country realize that corruption would be hard to manage, basically, because, for example, I've seen some photos circulating of some ministers shopping at Walmart, you know. So at this day and age, the youth of this country want different. You know, I'm a young man, I'm still 32, you know. So the youth of this country want different. It's just that it's a mental preparation, and that you say, you know, I was a fisherman. I remember my grandfather saying, you know, I could get whatever I want for a group with a grouper, you know, growing up. But I think as a young man in this country, I want better. I think the youth of this country want better, but we just have to make steps towards, as a people, at changing the mindset of how we do things.
The government has been faced with a number of issues that have played out very loudly in the media, the most recent being the dismissal of Reese Chipman from the Antiquities and from Antiquities and Monuments, even the threat now of a lawsuit against the sitting Prime Minister. And from a political perspective, I mean, you yourself having served in a cabinet before and having had a public discourse with the sitting Prime Minister at the time, what does that say about now the inner workings of the party at this stage and what is happening?
If you look at administrations in the past, these things have happened before. Quite frankly, it's nothing new. It's new to us because it's very recent. It's a new administration. But these things are to be expected in a party, in a government. It's how you deal with it. So I don't think it's something that says the party is crumbling. You've had disagreements with prime ministers and other members in the party, and sometimes it becomes public. But it doesn't necessarily have to rock the foundation of the party or calls for the crumbling of the government.
I asked this question just recently of another guest. When you have sitting MPs, even ministers, who are publicly disagreeing with a cabinet decision or with the Prime Minister, or saying, hey, we need to take a second look, how does that bode for democracy? Because I remember, as growing up, these things never happened. Right. You never broke ranks publicly sitting, you know, as you're sitting in Parliament, unless that was your indication that you're getting ready to do something else. Yes. But it just did not happen. But you see now sitting members of Parliament publicly disagreeing with the course the government has taken, or is taking.
Well, I think at the center of this is a question of what was campaigned on and what is actually happening. And again, for me, there's a narrative emerging in each of these disagreements that seems to contradict in fundamental ways the campaign promises of the administration. Now, whether or not that contradiction is happening is up for the party to deal with. And at the end of the day, those persons who are having the disagreement have to decide what their next steps are going to be. But again, that narrative, I think, is problematic. And one of the things that I'm recalling the former Greek Minister of Finance, Yanis Varoufakis, saying in his memoirs about the EU, that for those of us who are in the kind of halls of government, we have a choice to make. Either we can be on the inside and be silent about what's going on, or we're on the outside and be loud about what's happening, right? And as a person who is concerned about the well-being of the people that I serve, I have to make the decision as to whether or not I'm going to be silent and sit on the inside and try to influence those processes, or if I'm going to be on the outside and be loud about those processes and try to influence them from a media standpoint. And so I think that perhaps might be kind of the decision that people are trying to make currently.
Clay, is the opposition capitalizing on what is happening with these members of Parliament, with in even some instances cabinet ministers? Is this an opportunity now for the PLP?
Well, I think in any political climate, parties, especially opposition parties, are fueled by the people. The people, their discourse and discouragement with the current government, of course, has fueled the opposition party. So, you know, circumstances like the firing of over 5,000 civil workers, whether it be political or non-political, you know, you have a lot of families involved with these 5,000 people, you know, out of work. You know, you have the Oban situation, you have the blacklisting. So it's a lot of things that's happening in this current political environment. And of course, you know, opposition's job is to oppose. Their job is to hold the government accountable for what they are doing. And, you know, people are not concerned about the past. You know, it seems like every situation with this current government, if it's going good, you know, the FNM, the administration done it. If it's going bad, it's because of the PLP, because of the 5 years prior. Just in December, the Prime Minister said that we had to take the necessary steps to prevent us from being blacklisted. Come a couple months later, we are blacklisted. So, you know, the thing is that, of course, we have to do our job because the Bahamian people rely on us to ensure that the government does what they need to do to ensure that this country is moving in the right direction.
Gentlemen, we are at the point of a break in our show. We have lots more to discuss. Clay, you would have certainly stirred that pot with some of the things that you mentioned. We're going to tackle some of those issues. Stay with us. Our first anniversary on the record. We're back right after this. We are in our second season of On the Record, and we thank you, our viewing audience, for allowing us into your homes every Thursday at 8 p.m. We value your opinion, and we want you to be a part of our discussions. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and comment on our exciting topics. Remember, it's all on the record. Welcome back to the second half of tonight's show. Our topic is On the Record, a look 1 year later. So much has happened since we began this show a year ago. Obviously, we've changed governments, administrations. But, you know, within the time of any party's term in governance, the first year is generally the settling in period when, you know, you have folks getting adjusted. You've got a new prime minister, a new cabinet, for the most part a slate of new MPs. But within this year, there have been a lot of issues that have gotten a lot of attention. One of the more recent has been the Oban deal. Government would have announced plans to bring this refinery to East Grand Bahama, and there have been a lot of questions raised, a lot of noise made, even to the point where we understand an injunction may be going before the courts to do something to put an end to this, or at least to halt it. But Clay, I'm going to start with you. And I've asked this question of quite a few guests since this whole Oban deal has come up. But when you look at a Grand Bahama, when you look at East Grand Bahama, yes, because Freeport I don't consider to be family island, a family island setting for many reasons, but you look at a Western 8 Mile Rock and East Grand Bahama, those are more your family islands. But when you look at an area like this that doesn't have a lot of economic activity, you have this billion-dollar deal coming in, the prospects of new jobs and economic, what is touted to be now, something that's going to breathe some economic life into that. And then you have all of this opposition to it. How does that play out in a family island setting when, hey, we've been without jobs, we've been without all of these things for so long, and now you have the prospect of something coming in, but there's all this opposition to it.
Well, Jerome, I don't think it's opposition to the job structure, basically. I think it's everything surrounding the Oban deal, the lack of the EIA, the questions on funding, you know, where the funding coming from. You know, it's a lot surrounding these issues. And then when they had the meeting in Grand Bahama the last week, I think it was, you know, the guy who supposedly was in charge of Oban Energies still didn't come with any relief to the people on their questions. He left in a hurry. So in Family Islands, we support economic development. But as you know, you travel a lot. In Family Islands, we love where we live, you know, and we like how it is to some extent. But at the same token, we do encourage economic development, bringing jobs in, because the fact is, people in this country are hurting, you know, nationwide. You know, South Eleuthera is hurting a lot, you know. But it's just, it's not always what you do or what you say, it's how you do it and how you say it. So, you know, people are hurting, and opposition, I seen somewhere, they have this Facebook page where, you know, Brave Davis is against, what, 1,600 jobs or something, you know. But that's not the issue here. The issue is when you do a deal that impacts this country, a $5 billion deal, something that large, you gotta cross your T's, dot your I's, ensure that it's done properly, so that when my child grows up, or all the children in East Grand Bahama, they're not poisoned by the water table. They don't have issues with environmental, you know, Family Island love to fish. Will that cause an issue with the fishing industry around East Grand Bahama? You know, we don't know. It's more questions than answers to this Oban deal. So when you speak about economic development and things of that sort, you know, we support economic development. That's not the issue here. The issue is the deal, basically, and who's involved, who's controlling. You know, the website changed overnight. You know,
so who are the players?
Who's the players? Yeah. Who signed? You know,
Joey, you, Grand Bahamian.
Yeah.
This is very, very personal to you in many respects. I want you to weigh in on this.
It is very personal to me, and as a Grand Bahamian, I understand that the Grand Bahama that I grew up in the 80s and 90s is not the Grand Bahama of 2018, and that people are hurting. What I would encourage people to do, though, is to ask, what is the central objective of the Oban deal, right? I like to think of objective, strategy, and tactics, right? So what is the essential objective of this deal? And there are a couple of fundamental questions that come to mind. One, is this Oban deal a future-facing, forward-facing, progressive way for us to develop our economy in Grand Bahama? Does it sustainably leverage the resources at our disposal in Grand Bahama? Can we assure Grand Bahamians, and let's be clear, pollution has no borders, can we assure Grand Bahamians in the Bahamas at large that this is not something that's going to put at risk our greatest resources, which is our environment? And finally, can we assure Grand Bahamians that their health will be protected? Because there are a lot of us in Grand Bahama who believe that previous projects like this, who shall not be named, have caused a number of health issues for people on the western end of the island, or in the central western end of the island. So I think if we can answer those questions in the affirmative, then we may have a good deal here. But if there are questions that remain, then we have to take a closer, more intimate look at what's going on here. And that is what I would encourage people to do.
Ron, this deal has had issues from, I think, moments after signing, after the very public signing.
Yeah. It was rushed. It was something that was rushed, and I think the Prime Minister has acknowledged that when he spoke about, you know, there have been some missteps, but I think the government was so desperate to show that there was some type of economic development. You know, it's been months after the election. The economy has literally remained the same. People have been losing jobs as opposed to jobs being created. And therefore the government, in their haste, wanted to say, look, we have this billion-dollar deal here, and it's going to create jobs. It's going to be good for the economy, especially Grand Bahama, which is suffering terribly. But in their haste, and it has been admitted, there were some mistakes.
Is there a way out? You said yes.
Is there a way out of dealing with the political
is there
fervor?
a way?
I mean, yeah. So from a communication standpoint, which is what I do in my day job, if I were the government, I would put all of the relevant internal government stakeholders in a room with the media, and I would let the media hammer me to death. That's what I would do, and just get it out of the way. Because the problem that's currently happening is that this O-band deal and the questions around it have swallowed up the news cycle now for almost a month and a half, and will continue to do so. It's in the papers today. So I just get it all out of the way, as transparent as possible. The other thing is, and I said this the last time I was on the show, the governments, this is a problem in the last administration, need strong communication apparatuses, right? And why there is no singular core message, why there are no talking points to respond to everything that they're seeing in the paper, why there is a government minister who is fleeing or seems to be fleeing an interview on camera. These are all things that can be properly dealt with, properly managed with the right kind of communication apparatus. And finally, there's really a need, and this is again a problem with the last administration, to integrate our civil society and communication community organizations at the very start of these processes, because they snowball into opposition. And all it takes is for one organization or one activist to say, I'm not getting behind this, for the others to line up behind that. And so I would have dedicated a liaison on this project to all of the environmental and civil society organizations so that there could be deep engagement with these organizations on the ground. That's the way out of it, I think, from a strategic standpoint. What's not the way is to be silent about this, to carry on as if nothing happened, because we see how the last administration fared when they did that.
You know how this will end up, but I'll tell you, we have made requests over and over for guests to come on this show to be able to speak to O-band and even other issues that have arisen. And you're right, there just seems to be a shutting down and non-responsive. We get no response, or no, we're not sending anyone. Moving forward, the Prime Minister announced not long after taking office that all illegal immigrants had until December 31st to depart. Was this and the immigration policy that's been adopted, even right down to these immigration reforms that they're talking about, do you think thus far it's been effective, or has it just been a little bit too dramatic? Or, and I know this is very close to you, having served as the immigration minister before. So Brian, we're going to start with you.
I think the statement made by the government putting a deadline on all illegal immigrations must go by a certain date was a bit premature, simply because there are so many variables that go into the status of persons who live here today. The question is, who or are they indeed illegal? And we've seen it play out in the newspapers with regards to some persons who've been detained, and I'm very well aware of a particular matter that's going on where persons were thought to have been illegal when in fact they were Bahamians. So, you know, I think and I think the government may be trying to do it now, listening to the immigration minister. They're trying to put certain policies in place, trying to, I think he said they're reviewing the law as a whole, which I think is the course to take. And once that is done, then certain positions can be taken. But I think it was a bit premature, because you see the feedback and you see the pushback. And
almost chaos in some instances.
Very much so. From a legal point of view, it has caused, and it perhaps will cause, the government money for the actions it has taken that were not legal.
John, I know you want to get it. I know you have a response to this, but they're telling me I have to take a break. So just hold your points. We're going to stick a pin in it. Stay with us. This is our final break. We'll be back right after this. This is our final segment of this episode. We are discussing On the Record, a look 1 year later with our guests, Brian McCartney, Clay Sweeting, and Joseph Gaskins Jr. Joey, as we went into the break, I know you wanted to get in on this discussion about immigration and what has been the posture that this government has adopted with regards to immigration. The announcement December 31st is the deadline, but now coming post that with so many reforms they are attempting to bring to immigration.
So I would approach this from two perspectives. One is the kind of communication around the immigration policy, which I think has been a bit confusing if you're watching it closely, right? So, for example, you have the AG saying that we're considering raising the age that people can apply for those folks who are born in the Bahamas but not of Bahamian parents. But at the same time, a week or two ago, you have the Minister of Immigration saying that we're actually thinking about changing the law so that if you're between 18 and 19 and you don't apply when you're supposed to, after that you can only get a belongers permit, right? We also saw last year the PM talking about fixing the issues that came out of the failed referendum and saying that this will guarantee automatic citizenship for people, and then the AG coming back and saying, well, not exactly, it doesn't do that, right? And so I think the best way to go about this is to take the immigration policy as a whole, decide on what that's going to look like, and then communicate that in very clear terms to the Bahamian people. I do think, though, that the work that the Shantytown Committee is doing on trying to figure out what's going on in these informal settlements is really, really important work. And I think that's important because a lot of what we believe about shantytowns may not, in fact, be true, right? So we see shantytowns as kind of erupting out of the arrival of new immigrants. Mm-hmm. The Minister Folks's words seem to tell us that a lot of these people are actually Bahamian citizens. They've been here for a very long time working on the farms that they now live on, that there are a lot of children involved and these people are working. And so I think we have to take a very realistic look at the shantytown situation and create policy in ways that speak to the data that they're gathering currently. We have a choice to make, which is whether or not we are going to be humane and sensitive about the way that we deal with this issue, if we're going to be reactionary and cruel about it, or some might say conservative about it. But that is a decision that the Bahamian people should make with as much information as possible at their disposal. So I do applaud their effort to investigate that a bit more.
Clay, we're going to move the discussion forward a little bit because up to this point, we've really talked about what has been happening with the FNM and the Minnis administration, but I want to focus a little bit on the PLP as well. A small opposition, but, you know, in the past few weeks, having to speak out publicly, we would have, prior to that, had a very public showdown in the House of Assembly with the Speaker and member Glenys Hannah Martin, and by extension the entire opposition side. And so really from the PLP's perspective, what has changed other than, you know, having now elected a new leader since the May election, since last year? What has happened within the PLP?
Well, as you know, we had convention last year, and leading up to that, we were somewhat quiet, rebuilding retrospect, what happened, you know, what caused us to lose the general election. So we've really been rebranding, you know, discussions. You could look at the Senate and the makeup of the Senate. You have a young, dynamic lady as Senator Jo Beth. I think you had on the show.
Oh, she's been on several times. Yeah, she's a good friend of ours here on The Record. We like her.
Exactly. You know. Myself as a young entrepreneur, former fisherman. And then we have Dr. Darvel, who was seasoned in the former cabinet, as well as Fred Mitchell. So my view is that you need a balanced team, right? As long as us as young people want to say that we're ready to govern, we're ready to take the next step, I think that's all well and good. And we do need young people in this country to take the mantle with different views, different ideas. But at the same token, you need a balance. People that's been there, that knows how to govern. I think you can see a lot of mistakes that the government has made with a lot of new people. I think they might have one or two members has been there 2 terms. But I think that they really trying to figure it out. You know, they ran a campaign, they won the government, and they're trying to figure out how to run a government. So it's very important that within institutions such as the Progressive Liberal Party, that you have a proper balance. That, for example, I grew up around my grandfather, and before I wanted to make any decision, large decision, I used to always seek his advice because he's been there before. It might not be the same circumstance, same situation, but he's been there. So the same thing in the PLP.
I have to ask you, has the party really purged itself of some of the people and some of the policies and actions that would have led to that crushing defeat? I mean, you use the word institution. It's interesting because I always refer to the PLP as a political institution. Yes, it is very institutionalized because you have some folks who have been there from the days of Lyndon, who are still calling the shots and pulling the strings. But, you know, and has the party really and honestly, truly purged itself of those things that would have led to the issues it had going into the elections?
Well, you know, it's hard to say exactly what caused. We know young people are tired of the party, tired of the old guard. Tired of the old guard. So, you know, of course, that's a inner workings of the party. That's some things you just don't discuss. But at the same token, I think that a party is sitting back, looking at what we need to do, how we need to rebrand, how we need to regroup, bring new faces in, new ideas, people that's sound, that's ready to work for the people. You know, I started in politics when I was a 25-year-old man, you know, as a fisherman, you know, but I got in it because I wanted to make a difference in my community, in my constituency, and I continued on that path. So if you have people that's not of self, and you find these people, you put together a good team, you know, that's really what it's all about, making this country better. So it's important that parties like the Progressive Liberal Party ensure that they put together a team that can do that.
Brian, since your departure from the leadership, from the helm of the DNA, party has remained, but in some instances very quiet, not quite sure. I mean, I've seen a couple of statements been issued, but really what, from where you sit, is there still a viable future for the DNA?
Very much so. Ultimately, that'll depend on the Bahamian people. The DNA, I thought, had the best plan for this country. I hear people say that they had to vote for the F&M because there was no other choice. I think that's a very, very, I can't call it a word, but that statement, you had a choice. You had a choice in the DNA. And it was just the Bahamian people who were afraid of change. And that's the mindset. The party is going through some internal changes, organizing and preparing.
Will they last? Do you think they're going to remain together into the next election?
I think so.
You think so?
Yes, I think so. They had a conclave last month, and the idea was a way forward in relation to the DNA. You have the leader, Mr. Chris Mortimer, the deputy, who is now Minthia Komalafi, and they are strategizing, preparing, and galvanizing. So, you know, it was a defeat for the party, but like anything else, we accept it. We respect what the Bahamian people had to say and what they did. The Bahamian people are living with what they have done.
And we'll have to.
And
you'll have to. I've got to. We're almost out of time.
And we move forward.
Joey, I'm going to give you the last word here this evening. You know, right after elections, there's always a honeymoon period. People are still sort of in that euphoria or in that devastated loss. But really, if you can give us sort of a snapshot into the temperature of the people almost a year later, and what is the thinking and the psyche of, particularly of the young voters who really, as everyone has admitted, helped to make this huge change at the polls?
So, you refer to me as a sociologist. Like I said, in my day job, I do communications and policy strategy at Public Domain. So I happen to have polling numbers. And for example, I can tell you that the government had an approval rating after the May election in June of about 65%. We saw that people believed that the country was going in the right direction in June at 67%. By September, that number had dropped about 32% to people saying, we're not sure what direction the country is going in. In fact,
to 32%?
Wow. What we saw was that a 258% increase in the number of people saying that they weren't sure what direction the country was going in. One of the good things for the administration, though, is that what we didn't see was an increase in the number of people who said the country is going in the wrong direction. That was in September. You would have seen recently polling data published by the Nassau Guardian in the National Review that said that the government's approval rating stood at about 58 to 57 to 58%. 14% of those people saying that the government is doing a really good job or a very satisfactory job. And so I think 6 months in, we saw the government lose a bit of its footing in the honeymoon period, but still holding on and people still hopeful. I'm not sure exactly where we would be if we took those numbers now in March or in April, right, after Oban and after a number of these things. And so I think that just says that we have to be very careful with the hearts of Bahamian peoples if you're talking about honeymoon, right?
Yep.
Those hearts have been broken. And I think what people really want is not just jobs or investment, but I think what people are really asking for is vision, right? A clear vision. And I think young people in particular want to know, what kind of Bahamas am I going to be living in when I'm 50 years old, right? And until we speak to that, we have a problem.
Gentlemen, a great note to end on. Thank you very much. I have to say it has been a pleasure having you gentlemen on to really begin to hash out some of the issues that have arisen in the past year. Year seems to have gone by very quickly. A lot has happened, and certainly as we move now to our 2nd anniversary and hit the 1st anniversary marker of this government, it'll be very interesting to see a year from now which discussions we'll be having. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick, short break, and we'll come back with a wrap-up. Stay with us. Yeah.
We're gonna give you a check every week for a year.
Bro, you hear about Percy's pension plan?
Yeah, something about $1,000 a week for a year.
That's Percy's pension plan. You could win one of 5. All you gotta do is put $20 on your Island Game account, and you have a chance to win up to 52 times.
You know something, guys? I can need one of those Percy's pension plan, because with Island Game, it's surely a guarantee.
Island Game, we got you. Percy's pension plan. From the friends you can trust. If winning is a must, don't play the game you know.
Oi, I ain't got no tension. I got Percy's pension.
Count and ride this easy train at Percy's Island Game.
As we prepare to say farewell tonight, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for making our first year far better than we would have anticipated. Your continued support and well wishes makes our job worthwhile. When we began this journey, we weren't quite sure how a political debate-style talk show would be received. But by your responses, you have certainly proven that we have a winner on our hands. Again, we want to thank you, as well as a special thank you to Senator Fred Mitchell, Pamela Miller, and Stephen Cancino, who have been invaluable in providing weekly guests from the major political parties. We hope you have enjoyed our show tonight, and special thanks, of course, to tonight's guests, Loretta Turner, Brand McCartney, Clay Sweeting, and Joseph Gaskins Jr. As always, my producer and technical staff, and of course you for watching week after week. Be sure and join us for more On the Record, same time, same place. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. See you next week.